Okay, hello and welcome to MSDynamicsWorld.com's Fall 2013 BI and Reporting webcast series. I'm Jason Gumpert, and joining us for today's event is returning speaker Noah Mosley of MSX Group. Noah is a veteran financial reporting expert for Microsoft Dynamics. He focuses on Forecaster, Management Reporter, and FRX. And before founding MSX Group, Noah was a consultant with Microsoft and part of the original FRX consulting team. We're really glad to have Noah back for another of his very popular sessions today. And as we get started, I just want to add that we invite you to add your feedback and ask questions during the event. You can use the Q&A block or the chat block that you see to the right of the slides. We'll also be running some polls, so keep your eyes open for those. And we look forward to hearing from you. So without further delay, please allow me to welcome Noah Mosley. Noah.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. I should have my screen shared with the title screen for us. This is Training for Management Reporter. You got my name up there, Noah Mosley, and email address. We've got a few slides to go through before we actually get into the application. Today, for this hour, we're going to be talking about the application itself, as well as the migration, if you're copying your reports from FRX over to Management Reporter. Jason already gave me an introduction, but a little bit about my company, the MSX Group. We are a consulting practice, and we specialize in really just three products: Management Reporter, Forecaster, and FRX. All three of these we work with AX, GP, NAV, and SL, and we provide consulting services, training classes, webinars such as this, and software support for these products. Few questions to throw out to the crowd before we really dive into this. Jason has got some polls that you can respond to him on. First one out there, and they're on the right-hand side, I believe, on the control panel. I'm curious to see, have you already seen demos of MR? And then there's a second question up there, is have you already installed Management Reporter as well? Just to see, get a feel for everybody's exposure to the product. You know, have you seen it? Have you already installed it? To get a feel for the group, we've got over 60 people online right now. So just curious to see how those are going. I'll check back on that poll in just a minute. Or Jason, is that automatic when that polling?
You know, we'll leave it open. I can see a few people are sort of still in progress. We'll give it another 10 seconds.
Okay. So while you have those polls on the right-hand side there, I'm going to jump in the next slide, and I'll check back for those results for those questions.
All right.
A little bit about Management Reporter, just so that everybody will know exactly what you're getting into with Management Reporter and what it does for us. So Management Reporter is the financial reporting package for your general ledger data. This is what you're going to use to pull all your income statements, your balance sheet statements, cash flow statements, trial balance statements, and any kind of other supporting schedule together from your GL data. I want to point out that it's only GL data. It does not go out to the other sub-ledgers or anything else like that that feed into the GL. So not payroll data, it's not fixed asset data, it's just the GL data. You can drill down to the account level balances and the transactions for those balances and then back into Dynamics. But just want to be clear, it is for financial data from the general ledger database.
Now, are you seeing the poll results on the right now?
Poll results. I see polling.
I can read them off to you if they're not showing up.
I don't see results.
Well, let me maybe sort of read them off then, since we have got the results here. So, have you seen demos of Management Reporter? And let me try that one more time to make them visible. Have you seen demos of Management Reporter? Okay, so you can see that now. So it's 26% say yes, 47% say no. Have not already seen a demo. Have you installed it?
For that, so.
Yeah. And then 22% say yes for installing, and 51% say no.
All right, so the majority of you are in the same situation as everybody else. You haven't even seen the product yet, really. This would be a great time for you to get a tour of the application. Most of you have not even installed it yet, so this will give you a great insight into what you're getting into when you do the installation and you start that migration process from FRX. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate that. For the components that we get installed with Management Reporter, I've got them listed on the screen here for us in this PowerPoint slide. The components, there's several pieces that come with the installation of Management Reporter. You're going to have a report designer. It's a separate application. Usually you'll have that installed on your desktop, and that's where you're going to be building reports and running reports. If you're an administrator, you're going to have that application available for you. There is a report viewer / library. That is a separate application. Pretty much not everybody will have that, but it is a collection of every report that you have ever generated from Designer. So all those reports are in the library, and in that same library you can double-click the report that's already been generated and open it up and look at that in the library viewer. So 2 applications there. Another option for viewing reports is the web viewer. That's the 4th bullet point down there. So some people may not have the library viewer installed, so their option for viewing the reports will be the web viewer, which is really just Internet Explorer. It looks really neat how they've arranged that navigation and the look and feel of the reports and the drill down for the reports. It works really well. So that's another option for your report users. They may not be running reports, but they still need to be able to see the data and drill down to the details. I mentioned the report queue there, and on the 3rd bullet point, the report queue is what does all the work when you run a report. So if you're in Designer and you click Generate to run a report, before it ever gets to the library or the viewer, it goes through the report queue to be processed. So that always pops up. Anytime you click Generate to run a report, you're always going to see it. The server does all the work, so it doesn't tie up your local machine. As soon as it finishes, it opens it up in the web viewer or in the library viewer. Now, I believe everybody on the phone today is curious about a migration wizard from FRX. So it's not a required deal, so you don't have to have the migration from FRX to Managed Reporter. But if you've been using FRX for a long time, you've probably got tons of reports that you do not want to have to create from scratch and start all over. So an easy way around that is we're going to have the migration wizard that will go out to FRX, and it will copy everything you can find out there inside FRX, and it will copy all that into Managed Reporter, clean it up for us as best it can, and then we have a starting place for the reports inside Management Reporter. Now the Migration Wizard is kind of a one-time deal. You would do the installation for Management Reporter, then you would run the Migration Wizard that copies everything over from FRX, and you're pretty much done with the Migration Wizard, so you can uninstall it after that. You can run it as many times as you need to, but I just want you to keep in mind that every time you run the Migration Wizard, the first thing it does is it erases everything in the Managed Reporter database. So if you have reports that you are building inside Managed Reporter already, the Migration Wizard will erase all those and then copy the stuff in from FRX. So it's kind of a one-shot deal. Copy everything over, make some changes inside Managed Reporter going forward, uninstall the Migration Wizard so you don't accidentally run that again and lose all those reports inside MR. The 4 bullet points at the bottom, just want to briefly mention those. They're more like an IT side, but just want to let you know that these things are out there in the background. We've got SQL databases that are storing everything for Management Reporter. So FRX had all the report definitions stored in Access databases. So instead of Access, everything in Management Reporter uses SQL. So a huge step forward there for how the data is stored for us. There's actually 2 databases that Managed Reporter uses. One will store all the report definitions, and there's a middle one called a data mart that is actually a copy of all your GL data. So you get your GL database that has your source data, and then that is copied into the data mart, and that's what is used for all the reports, all the balances. So 2 databases that make up Managed Reporter as an installation. There are services that run on the server that control security, getting to the databases and running the reports. Those are on the server. Security is all based on Windows authentication. So if you're logged into your machine, that is the user that Managed Reporter recognizes when it opens the reports. So a caveat with that is that if you're going to use Designer and the web viewer or the report library, you've got to be a valid user on your network, and you've got to have access to those reports inside MR. So that means that you can't be at the coffee shop using the web viewer unless you have at least a VPN connection to your network. There's other output options if you are not on the network, so you can get these reports out to other users other than the web viewer or the library viewer. You could send this out to Excel, print to paper, or send it out to XPS. XPS is just a static copy of that report, and it's Microsoft's version of PDF, so it's very user-friendly, drill down through all the details. But when you export these reports out to Excel, the printer, or XPS, at that point there's no security, so it's just a file at that point or paper. Once we get into Designer, I want to mention the building blocks about how you're building reports inside the application. So the Report Designer uses building blocks when you're building the reports, and those are defined as row definitions, column definitions, reporting tree definitions, and then you combine those three into the report definitions themselves. When you're building reports, you're always going to have a row definition that tells Manager Reporter what every row in the report represents. You're always going to have a column definition telling Manager Reporter what every column represents in the reports. Reporting trees are optional, but they do come in handy if you want to summarize any of your dimensions from your GL database. And if you have multiple GL companies, you've got to have a reporting tree if you ever want to see those balances consolidated into one statement. And we use the base concept, the same as we did with the FRX. So when you build your column definitions, instead of hard-coding the year and the month for every column, we use the word base. And that way when you run your report, you pick the year and the month you're running the report for, and that is what the column definition reads from. Now, all these concepts were used in FRX, so if you are a very good user of FRX, you won't have any problem at all getting used to these inside Management Reporter. So that should be a big relief off your shoulders there. It won't take you long at all to get used to Management Reporter if you're coming from FRX. We are going to mention a few points about the migration here. So for the users that have been using FRX and you're going to Management Reporter, the migration wizard is great. It copies a ton of stuff over there for us, so we don't have to recreate these inside Management Reporter. Otherwise, I mean, if you've been using FRX, you've probably got 20, 30, or 40 reports or more out there with and then all the rows, the columns, and the trees that you mix and match together for these reports. And it would be a huge ordeal to have to recreate all those inside Management Reporter. The migration wizard helps us go through and copy all that stuff over for us. A few points I want to mention about that migration wizard. Before you run it, there's some cleanup that you can do inside FRX. There's FRX has you might have old companies inside FRX you can get rid of, old specification sets inside FRX. And it's always a good practice to look back at all the building blocks inside FRX and think and consider, are you using these anymore? So if you can get rid of any old unused rows, columns, trees, or report definitions inside FRX, you can delete those and not copy those over to Management Reporter. The cleanup process inside FRX, the big part about that is because when you run the migration wizard, there's nothing that says copy some of these things and ignore others. When you start the migration wizard, it's going to copy everything that's out there. So the only way to not get it into Management Reporter is to go through FRX and do that cleanup process. Once you do the migration wizard, you're going to be proofing reports between the two applications, so you can still have FRX running the same time you've got Management Reporter running. That way you can take your income statements and you run those in FRX, run the same report inside Management Reporter, and compare the balances and make sure everything's coming across correctly. We do that because when you do the migration wizard, Management Reporter does a great job of copying pretty much everything that's out there. There are plenty of things that it can't recognize or it doesn't know what to do with, and it will flag those inside Management Reporter with error codes. So Management Reporter gives you a chance to fix those problems yourself. But there's some things that do not get migrated over and do not get flagged as errors. And you would not really know those are missing until you run those two reports between FRX and Management Reporter and compare the two. So it's really important to keep those both running, or and compare the reports between the two applications. So you make sure these are running correctly. A couple of those things are mentioned on the next bullet point there for you to review your account sets inside FRX. Go back and review any reports that are chained together, and look and see if you have any reports that are using row linking, and if you've got any rows, columns, and trees that are not currently used in any report definitions inside FRX. A little bit about some of those account sets do not migrate over to Managed Reporter, and there's no warning that they don't get copied over. Okay, none of them go over, and so you lose the references in any of your row definitions, columns, or trees for those account sets. And there's no warning that it goes away. You just have to. A lot of the situations you would not really know until you ran a report and saw the balances were missing. So before you do the migration, it's a good practice to go through FRX, check and see if you're using any account sets, and be aware that you've got to manually recreate those inside Managed Reporter after the migration. Chained reports. Any report inside FRX you could chain to a second report, and you can chain them to as many as you need to. No chaining definitions get migrated over to Managed Reporter. So for that, you've really got to go through your reports inside FRX and take an inventory and see if you actually have anything chained to another report. And chaining inside FRX is like you have one report, you run it, as soon as it finishes, if it's chained to a second report, the second report starts running. And you can chain two reports together, or as many reports together as you need to. And you really don't know if you have chaining unless you go through your catalog ID and check the output tab for all your FRX reports. Now, the migration doesn't copy that over to Managed Reporter, but once you know which reports you need chained together, inside Managed Reporter you can create a report group, put those reports in that report group, and run them all at the same time anytime you need to. Row linking is not used inside Managed Reporter, and that does not migrate over at all, and it doesn't get flagged as an error necessarily either. So row linking is you have one reporting tree that uses multiple row formats. Managed Reporter, the migration is going to drop those linked row definitions. So you'll need to actually probably create two separate reports inside Managed Reporter after the migration to make up for those. And unused rows, columns, and trees. If you've got a row, column, or a tree that is not being used by catalog ID, that will get copied over to Managed Reporter during the migration process, but it will drop any references to dimensions or account IDs. So in those situations, you have to check those and make sure that you go back inside Managed Reporter and fill in those missing account IDs or dimension codes. And a lot of the time you can copy from FRX, just copy and paste from FRX over to Managed Reporter. Sometimes you might go through Excel, copy from FRX over to Excel, rearrange stuff and paste it into Managed Reporter. But just be aware that the migration wizard sometimes may drop those account IDs and dimension IDs during the migration. And I believe if you have a row that drops all the references, that get flagged as an error. So that'll stand out for you, and you'll see that and know you've got to be able to fix it. And then the last point there is to go in and uninstall the migration wizard after you've finished with it. You can run it 3 or 4 times if you need to. Typically, I'll just do it once and be done with it and uninstall it. Don't leave it out there, because like next year you might have an intern come in and say, oh, what's this? Let's run it again. And like by the second or third screen, they've erased all your reports inside Managed Reporter. So let's go over to the application and give you a tour of that for us. Okay, so I've got on my screen a remote server. We've got Manager Reporter installed. Jason, let me know if you don't see the black background with the two icons for Report Designer and Report Viewer.
I do see it.
Thank you, Jason. So two separate applications. Report Designer is where you're going to build reports and run reports. You've got the Report Viewer, which is a library of all of the reports you've ever generated from Designer. And you can open up any of those inside that viewer. It's kind of like the drill down viewer from FRX with some extra bells and whistles. And there's also a web viewer, but that's really just Internet Explorer. I've already got a report open for us in the report viewer. So I've got that open on the screen now. Just a short income statement in the middle of the page there. I've got this using the Fabricam Inc. Demonstration company inside Manager Reporter here with the company logo on the left. This is the body of the report. We're looking in the viewer here. And we've got paneling on the right and left for different reasons for us. When I ran this report, I used a reporting tree. So the tree shows up on the left-hand side for us, all departments, and then I've got a list of 5 different departments that roll up into that tree. So this income statement's by department. You can navigate real easily between the different pieces in the reporting tree. Just one click on any part of the tree switches to that part of the statement. So all this money is for that department, administration. Easy click to any other department inside the reporting tree. When I ran this report, I ran it for drill down, so I have account level details I can drill down to, as well as down to the transaction level details. So here in the library viewer, I can double click on any row here for balances, and I can drill down to the exact account numbers that all those balances came from. And if I want to go further, I can double click anywhere on any of these accounts and drill down to the transactions that roll into these balances. Every time I double click, this opens up a new report on top of the last one. So there's a back button at the top. I can just go back to the previous screen to find all the reports I've drilled down to, and they're all listed under that window link at the top. So I can jump back and forth that way as well. Down at the bottom, there's several navigation buttons for us. We can jump using the Go To button. I can jump to any subtotal row in the report. If you have a lengthy report and net income's on page 5, this will take me right to page 5 for that row. You can jump between page numbers real easy here with this middle option. Just type in the page number, it takes you right to it. Or the Browse button for browsing back and forth one page at a time, or to the last page or the first page. Another thing that they've added for us is on the right-hand side, we've got a comment column which has all the comments that we might add to this report, as well as any charts and graphs we might add. So I've already got gross comments. I've got a little square out here to the left. I've already added a comment for that row. So it was added by the administrator on earlier today, and whatever text you add there. So it's a great way for us to use the report viewer to add comments, like if you've got an actual column next to budget and you want to explain some kind of variances there. Now, as soon as you enter that text and say it's saved in the database, and any user that can come to the same report can see that same comment that you just added. Charts and graphs are easy to add. It's just a matter of right-clicking on any row or column and then selecting the type of chart that you want to add for that selection. And these are pretty much the same ones you see in Excel or other Office applications. Once you add these charts and graphs, you can use the thumbtack to save it to the report. That ties it on the right-hand side. So now anybody else that opens the same report sees that same chart that you just added. So if you were using FRX for years and years, comments were new for us. Charts and graphs were new for us. Having the reporting tree always on display on the left-hand side, that's new for us. FRX would kind of hide it as soon as you opened up a report, and you'd have to go back to that page just to open up a different part of the tree. I definitely like how it's always displayed on the left-hand side. It's an easy one-click to jump around to any part of the tree. I mentioned the export options earlier. So if you have your reports generated, you can still send these out to Excel or to the printer or to XPS files. All those output options are icons at the top here. Send this out to Excel the same way FRX would send out to Excel. So if you exported a report to Excel using FRX, you could export out the summary level report, the account level detail, and the transaction level detail, and you could send that out for all of the reporting tree if you needed to, and that would all go out to separate tabs in the Excel file. Same concept here, works the same way. XPS does the same thing, almost. It's just separate pages for the account level details, separate pages for the transaction details, and separate pages for the different parts of the tree. You've got the printer icon, print to paper, and you've got the icon for email. A little bit about the email link here. So email is not an attachment. It just sends an email with a link back to this report. So if you send this to someone else, they've got to have a valid user ID with access to the report viewer or the web viewer, Internet Explorer, so that they can open up this report. So those emails are still tied to Windows authentication, your Windows Network ID. So there's still all that security tied to it, even though you just emailed it out. It's just a link back to this location. Before I go back into Designer, I want to mention the library button. There's a library button in the lower left here. So we've been looking at a report data section that was generated for us. We can browse around, drill down to the details. But all the reports I have ever generated from Designer are listed under the library button. So when I click over here, top left, I've got all the folders that I've used to organize all my reports. And depending on which folder I select, those reports are displayed on the right. So you'll set this up. You can have any order of folders that you need. Typically, I'll see monthly references and then monthly and yearly references. You might have quarterly reports out here in a folder by themselves. You might have folders organized by manager. So you can organize these folders any way you need to. These are not folders on the network. These are folders organized in SQL. So it's just it's not on the network. It's all in SQL, the SQL database, and you can organize these any which way you need to. So we'll look inside Designer next and see how the reports are put together, navigation for Designer. Just to rehash quickly, this is the report library viewer. It's got a collection of all the reports you ever generate from Manage Reporter. And it's also an easy way in this report data button to view the report, drill down to the details. Now behind the scenes, building the reports is all in Report Designer. Now not everybody will have access to Report Designer, just the people who need to be able to build reports and run reports. It's a separate application all by itself. We've got it already open here for us. And for the navigation for Designer, on the right-hand side is your work area. I've already got a report definition open, so there's a lot of fields here and drop-down boxes and tabs across the top. I'll talk about these in a little bit. On the left-hand side is our main navigation. So I've got buttons on the left for report definitions, and if I look above that, I can see a list of all the report definitions I've ever created. And it's just a matter of double-clicking to open these up and then run the report. You've also got buttons for all the row definitions, and then they are all displayed at the top. Same thing for column definitions and for reporting tree definitions. All those are grouped, listed out here numerically and alphabetically, but you can also add folders to organize all these reports, rows, columns, and trees. So FRX, your only option was to really organize it by numeric values or by letter codes. So here you can still use that concept, or you can go ahead and add folders and organize these by any other folder name you need to. So this folder here would have a collection of all my report definitions for my income statements. So a great way to help you organize those definitions. And you can do those folders in the report definitions. You can do the folders under row definitions, as well as columns and trees as well. So when you do the migration wizard, I want to point out that you'll do the migration wizard. That will populate all the reports, rows, columns, and trees that it copies over from FRX. When you log into Manage Reporter and you look at, say, row definitions, any that it recognizes as an error, it'll have a little red tag right beside it. It'll stand out. You'll spot these pretty easy. So you'll have red tags against any of the rows that have problems, as well as any of the columns and the reporting trees as well. Then it's a matter of opening up that definition and fixing the errors that the migration wizard just could not figure out for us. Let's look at this row definition, and I'll give you a feel for that. So in this row definition, it's very similar to how FRX is set up. There's only 2 additional columns that are new from FRX, which is column E, the format override column. This used to be part of the formula in column D, and what it lets us do is override the formatting for the number, the balances, and if it could be a row that's currency, or just could be a numeric row, or it could be a row for percentages. So these were built into column D before with FRX. Now it's a separate column by itself. A lot easier to double-click and make your selections from these this list here. And column I is new for us. It's a new column, but the functionality was there inside FRX. This one is the row modifier column, and it was part of the link to the GL column. But now if I double-click on column I, I've got all my modifiers for the account modifiers, which really refers to period references, beginning balances, current period activity, year-to-date. You could also override your book codes. So if it's not actuals, this row might be pulling budget data. And attributes as well. You can pick any of the attributes in the list and then select a range to limit which attributes come back into this row. So all this functionality was inside FRX before. It was just part of the link to the GL column. Now the other columns you'll see very similar to FRX, row codes in column A, descriptions in column B, format codes in column C, and I don't think any of those are new since FRX. If you, well, let me look. There's, if you double-click in column C, you'll have a list of all the ones that were that are available for Manage Reporter. The line ones are new, but you'll spot the ones that are familiar with you, like DES for header rows or blank rows, TOT for subtotals, CAL for complex calculations, single underscores, and double underscores. So a lot of similarity. What they don't have for you is that drop-down arrow, so you don't always know there's a drop-down arrow selection for you. So if I'm not in that cell, the arrows go away. And even if I do click in that cell, they don't show back up. You just have to know that you can double-click and get the list. Ranges have changed from FRX. So during the migration wizard, if you had a range calculation like row code 80 space TO space 170, that is going to be converted, and instead of space TO, it's going to be a colon. So range formulas, it drops the TO and replaces that with a colon. There's no spaces before or after. And the migration does that for you. And that happens in any formulas, like in column D or in the column definitions, if you have variance columns or range calculations for the columns. And it does the same thing for the link for the account numbers, if you have ranges of accounts. Column F is the same as F or X. Column G, I believe that's all the same options that we had from F or X. Stuff like NP for non-printing, CS for currency symbols, and limiting that row to just debits or just credits. Column restrictions work the same way as in F or X. Column J is the big difference for us. Column J is now called Link to Financial Dimensions. In F or X, that was linking to the GL. Same concept. This is what's going to tell Manager Reporter what account numbers or dimension IDs you're going to pull out of the GL database. The formatting has changed a great deal. When you do the migration wizard, Manager Reporter is going to add the text with a plus icon, the name of the segment equals, and in brackets, put your account IDs. So this would be like plus account equals, and in brackets, 4,500 through account 4899. So ranges still work fine. It's just using the colon instead of the word TO. Wildcards still work for us. The question mark works fine as a wildcard for every character in an ID code. And we can also use the asterisk as a wildcard as well. Now in column J, if I double click and look at my selections, this pop-up window will give us a list of every dimension you've got in your GL database. It's a lot friendlier at how Manager Reporter lets us pick these codes instead of F or X. F or X was not as flexible as we are now with Manager Reporter. And here I can mix and match any of my segments. I've got segment 1, segment 2, and segment 3 in this demo database. All your dimensions would show up here. You can mix and match any of these. And in F or X, in your row definition, you would either have to have just the account number or the entire account mask. If you had anything else, you'd have to go and have a reporting tree to use against that row definition. A lot more flexible here with Manager Reporter. You can mix and match without having to have a reporting tree. It's just far more flexible than F or X was with adding and subtracting all these dimension IDs together. In the same pop-up window, which will give us options for all your segments, all your dimension codes from your GL database, the same window is used for any column in your column definitions, and it's used for any reporting unit in the reporting trees. Same pop-up window. For the ones who are going through the migration wizard for us, you know, I said earlier that if you had a row definition, a column, or a tree that had an error, it would have a red tag out here on the left-hand side. When you open it up, you'll get warning messages that you have errors, and any error in here, it'll flag with red circles. So let me show you. If I take out this right here, and row code A, when I try to save it, it gets flagged with an error, a little pop-up message, and all the red circles that you open these up and you see all the red circles, if you hover over the red circle, don't click, but just hover over it, it pops up and tells you what the problem is. So after the migration, you're going to have the process of going through that, finding these red circles, which they're easy to spot, and correcting the errors. Let's look at the column definition next for us. Column definition the same way in F or X. It's kind of a split screen. We've got the header section, and this is the header for each individual column, and then you've got the body of the definition at the bottom. Very similar codes that we had from F or X. You've got the column type, DESC for description columns. In the F or X, we had GL columns that linked back to the GL. Those are now called FD columns for financial dimensions. And for every financial dimension column you select, you're also going to select what book code that column is pulling from, like actuals or budget or anything else for a book code. The fiscal year that column is going to pull from, and we use the base concept the same way F or X did. So that's going to be a generic or code so that when you run the report, you pick the year, and this column reads that year. We'll also have the period for each column. These are hard-coded for this report, but you could use the base concept as well for periods. And what period is covered. This is periodic. In FRX, that was just CUR for current period activity. And periodic does the same thing, it's just the periodic activity. And you can also double-click and still pull beginning balances for that period, year-to-date balances, or the beginning balance for the year. And the rest of the columns here going down the page, very similar fields that you had from FRX. Dimension filter, this is what we had inside FRX as the account filter. And if I double click in the FD column for that cell, I get the same pop-up window we saw for the row definition. I can pick any of the dimensions and use those and combine those in these columns. So if you want one column that is limited to Department 1000, which is segment 1 for us, you just fill that in, and that just pulls back balances for Department 1000. For your column types, DESC is used, FD for linking to the GL database. That's financial dimensions now. CALC for your calculation columns. All these others were in FRX as well, I believe. Page break is new. So if you have a wide report with many, many columns, and you know that after the 5th column you want a page break, you can set that in here, and that way it will set that page break. It knows when to stop. If you do have a page break and you want your descriptions repeated on every new column, you can always set the print control so that that column descriptions are repeated on every page of the report. Let me look at the reporting tree definition next for us. Very similar to how FRX had the reporting trees, you've got a split screen here. On the right-hand side, you've got a spreadsheet type layout where everything is detailed out for us, specifying which company we're pulling data from. We have a short description in column B, which is typically displayed on the left-hand side. And column C is the title for that part of the tree. And typically these are pulled into the report headers. And then column D is linking to dimensions and a lot more columns to the right, but your main ones are columns A through D. So all the details on the right side here. In the middle, you've got a graphical display. And this graphical display, it really comes in handy if you need to click and drag and reorganize stuff here. And it's also a quick way to see what rolls into what. So if you have a lengthy reporting tree with many sub-levels, the tree lets you right away see what rolls into what. So there's many more columns over to the right. Just want to mention that when you do the migration wizard, if you had trees that could link to multiple row definitions, that's not the case inside Managed Reporter, at least not yet. So in Managed Reporter, you can only link, a tree can only link to one row definition at a time. So if you had reports in FRX that used different row definitions for different parts of the tree, you've got to rebuild those reports to accommodate that difference. We can still link to Excel data in these reports, and you can still set up security for the reporting trees as well. The next part in the designer here was the report definition itself. That's where you mix and match your rows, columns, and trees together to get the report definition. Just want to point these out here. This is, I've got one open currently. I've selected that row for us, the rolling quarter year to date for the column definition, and the reporting tree by department. There's 4 tabs across the top. Report is the main one. You'll recognize the pretty much the same drop-down selections you had from FRX for company name, detail level, financial account, and transactions as well. Provisional, which is posted, unposted, or both. The default base period works the same way as it did inside FRX, just helping FRX Management Reporter figure out when you open this report definition, what does it think you want to run the report for as far as the year and the month. So still uses the S for system dates and C's for your current period inside the GL database. Now, when you get ready to run your report, on the same page, you've got drop-down boxes for the base year and for the base period. I like these drop-down boxes a lot better than FRX. In FRX, you'd have a date, and it would have a pop-up window, and you fill those in. You'd have to type them in. The drop-down boxes seem a lot easier for us. Output and distribution. Big difference from FRX. Every report that you generate from Designer has got to go to the library first. It can't go anywhere else first. It's got to go to the library, and it also does the web viewer at the same time, but it doesn't let you go straight to the printer or straight to Excel or XPS. It's got to go to the library first. So a huge difference there. So if you have reports inside FRX that are going straight to Excel, those are going to change. Just so you'll be aware, it's going to have to go somewhere in the library instead. Headers and footers work the same way as it did inside FRX. Although I like the layout better. You've got everything on one screen as far as 3 boxes for the header and 3 boxes for the footers. The codes are about the same for all these header options as we had inside FRX. There are some new ones, and all the old ones and the new ones are all listed under this Insert Auto Text button, and they're all organized by group. So you can easily scroll through here and find the option that you want to pull into your headers or to your footers. And you can also now insert images inside your report headers. So that was a new thing that you could not do inside FRX. So if you want your company logo in your header, that's easy to upload here and use it on all the reports. You need to upload bitmap images or JPEGs. And the setting tabs, a lot of the similar options that you had inside FRX as far as rounding. You want calculations to run for the columns first and then the rows, or vice versa. Your reporting tree selection options. All the checkboxes on the left-hand side, these were available inside FRX. I think that display negative numbers in red is a new option for us inside MR. And the processing order. This is new inside FRX. You can only control whether the rows or the columns ran their calculations first. But with this option, now you can control when the calculations run, as well as when do you roll up the values in the reporting tree and when do you apply the rounding. So that just depends on what type of report you're building, what calculations are involved, and how you need all those to execute. But a little more flexibility for us for defining that order of calculations. They did hide a few things under this other button right here in the middle. So just be aware it's there. It's familiar stuff like portrait versus landscape, or margins, and shrink to page width that I use all the time. There's also 2 other tabs for account transaction details and some other options as well under additional. So between FRX and Management Reporter, the rows, columns, trees, and the report definitions are very similar. There's a few differences, but it's not hard to find those and get around that situation. I showed you where the red tags are going to be added to all the errors that the migration wizard can't figure out for us. There's some other buttons on the lower left I want to mention for you before we close out today's session: report groups and report schedules. So report groups will let us this is like the chained reports inside FRX. So in here we can group together as many reports into one group as we need to. Open that group up and generate that report. This one has about 6 reports all included in the same package. So I have them all listed. I can generate those all at one time. They all get processed on the server, so I don't have to open each one and generate each one separately. So this is the chaining option inside FRX. That chaining option, those details do not migrate over here. So you'd have to know what reports are chained together inside FRX and then build these report groups inside MR. And report schedules, that is built here as a separate package all by itself, a separate button. So schedules, you can schedule any report or a group of reports to run on any regular basis. You might have an expense report that you want to run every Sunday night at midnight, so by Monday morning all your managers come in and they have that report waiting for them. So scheduling and report groups, two separate tabs down here at the lower left. And security is a tab also. All security inside Managed Report is based on Windows authentication, so if you were using SQL authentication in FRX, that does not copy over to Managed Reporter. You've got to recreate brand new IDs for all your FRX users using Windows accounts. So Jason, I am coming up here on the top of the hour for us. Do you want to see if we have any questions out there? See if anybody typed in any questions for us, or?
Yeah, we have quite a few questions in the queue at this point, so if you want to maybe take a look at some of those. I can read them off to you if you'd like. So let's start.
Okay.
All right, so there's a few in the Q&A, and there's a few that came in through chat, too.
Okay.
Why don't we just start looking through here and maybe start with some of the earlier ones. Does Management Reporter work with analytical accounting data as well?
Yep, we should pull that into the reports for you.
All right. Do you need Active Directory in order to do Windows authentication?
Good question. So everything here, all the security is based on your network ID. So you've got to have an Active Directory set up with all the user IDs that will need access to MR. So yes, you've got to have that set up with all the users.
When you add notes, graphs, and so forth to reports, do these only show when you are in Management Reporter? I would not want them on the printed copy that I provide to people.
So when you print something, there's a checkbox that says to print that stuff or not. So it's just a checkbox option. You can uncheck it and not print that to paper. And same thing for exporting. There's a checkbox, and you can choose not to export it.
And does the same apply to comments or to icons? Show it in the
printed
report?
Same thing. Yep.
Okay. That was another question. Is the web viewer a different install than the report library, and do reports need to be saved as a favorite to see them to see the report in IE?
So the web viewer just came out this year. So if you were on if you had already installed MR previously last year, you want to upgrade to get that new piece included. Your users in the field, all they need is Internet Explorer. It's not a separate install for them. They just need Internet Explorer with a link to the report that you've generated. So anytime you generate a report, it saves it on the server with a link, like a hyperlink. You just put that into your web browser's URL address bar, and that opens the report up. So no separate installation. You don't have to add to the favorites as long as they have that report link and they have access to the report. They can open it up. It's real easy.
All right. Can report definitions be password protected as you're able to do in FRX?
Yep. So if you're inside Designer and you do not want other people changing your report definitions, like your row definitions, you can open that report definition or that row, column, or the tree and use the padlock icon to protect it. That asks you for a password, you type it in, and then that locks it from everybody else. They can open it up and see it, and they could even do file save and make a copy of it, but they could not change your copy.
All right. If a new account is added in Dynamics, how does Management Reporter get updated?
So that is a great deal to do with how you build your reports. So for maintenance, if you add a new account in the GL database, Managed Reporter might not pick it up automatically. So if you look at this row definition I've got built right here, I've got these. A lot of these are individual accounts, like 6100, then 6110, and 6120. So if I added account 619, it would not automatically get picked up because those were listed individually. So you'd have to know that you added inside the GL and go update all the reports inside Managed Reporter. But now if you build your reports with wildcards or ranges and you add an account in that range, it gets picked up right away. There are other options as well. There's a missing account or missing dimension report, and that can help you spot accounts or dimension codes that are missing from your reports.
All right, we have a couple questions here about multiple companies. So if you're currently using FRX to roll multiple companies into a single report, can this also be done in Management Reporter?
Definitely. So Management Reporter would migrate or have all those reports, all those companies inside MR. You'd have a reporting tree that pulls the balances from all the separate companies into a single report. So that's still doable. Works the same way there.
All right. Does Management Reporter have client setups, or is it only server setup?
There are two pieces. So you have a server, which has the server has the SQL databases, and the server has the services that run everything and security. On the client, you're going to have, as an administrator, you'd have Report Designer and the Library Viewer. Some of your clients may not be running reports, so they would not need Designer. They might get by with just the web viewer and not have any local installation.
If you're using a lot of wildcards in FRX, will those be migrated into MR?
Yep, definitely. So the wildcards that use inside FRX, like the question mark, those get copied over into Managed Reporter. So that should be fine there.
All right. Can you print all reports in a report group at the same time, or do you need to print each one separately?
So the report group will generate out to the library all the reports at one time, but it does not let you print them all at one time. So you would have to print them separately from the viewer.
All right. Another question: do you recommend a data mart or standard legacy?
Well, they're going forward with the data mart. So that is their method of choice going forward. So at some point, they will just stop using the legacy. And for everybody out there, before the data mart, they just had the legacy connection to the database. So you would run a report, and Managed Reporter would go straight back to the GL database to check and pull all the account balances and details into the report. That did not necessarily run very quickly for most people. So to make these reports run more quickly, they came up with a middle database, the data mart, and that's what they're going to go with going forward from here. That is a copy of all the GL database. It updates itself every minute. So it goes out to the GL database, copies the new account balances and changes, and then when you run a report, the report never goes all the way back to the GL database. It just goes to the data mart to pull the data. So everybody should really go with the data mart. I have had some clients that had issues with missing balances, but we've troubleshot those and get that resolved. So they're going forward with the data mart. Eventually, you won't have the legacy option at all.
All right. Question here. Currently with FRX, we cannot use transactions because it bombs the reports. Is this the case with MR?
So I'd probably have to know that you can have transactions here inside Managed Reporter. I definitely would not exclude it. You know, just because it's not working inside FRX, try it inside MR.
All right. How much space do expanded reports take up on the server?
It's hard to say. It all depends on how many transactions you have and how many balances and how big the report is and how big the reporting tree is. It all gets saved on that SQL Server database, so it all comes back to how big that server is, how much space it has, and how fast it runs. I haven't seen an issue really, huh?
Mm-hmm. I should note that the person who asked that had also just asked about transactions bombing the reports in FRX.
Okay. It could be that you just have tons of transactions that are just bogging it down.
All right. We have another one here. Is it possible to include more than one general ledger in the same report?
Yes. So in this row definition, I've got one column J for one general ledger, but I can double click and add as many as I need to. That way I can have this one pulling from one company with a certain chart of accounts, and over in this company, it might be a whole different set of account numbers. So that's fine.
You know, I see that we are at the top of the hour. Do you have any more time to go through a few more questions? Because there's still a bit left here.
Yep, yeah, I can do that. So, I mean, this is a big topic for everybody. It's a big year because more and more people are being migrated from FRX over to Managed Reporter. FRX will eventually go away, so the sooner you jump on this Managed Reporter bandwagon, the better, especially right now because you can run them both side by side and get a feel for both products and make sure that it's working like you think it should work and like it worked inside FRX.
Yeah, and to anyone who does need to leave now, thanks so much for attending, but we will spend a few more minutes here as much as Noah can spare, taking a few more questions. We do have a handful more that have come in here. So
yeah, just to mention, Jason, if you've got people leaving early, let's see. Just want to briefly mention that you've got my email address and contact information on the screen there, noah.mosley@msxgroup.com. So if you are getting ready to go through the migration process, if you need help with it, email me. I'll be glad to help you out. It's what I've been doing all year in the last couple of years. It may be that you don't need a lot of help, so just a quick question, won't mind that at all. If you need me to do the entire migration for you, I can do that as well. And then if you need additional training, I handle that and consulting installation work too. And if you're going to be down in Tampa in 2 weeks for the user group conferences, I'll be there as well doing several MR classes. Look for me. Let me know you're in the session today.
All right, great. Well, let's get back to a few more questions here. On chained reports, we had to change the date on the individual reports to run. With the report groups, will we not have to do this?
When you get ready to generate a report group for like 5 different reports, you can set the date at that time, and it should be no problem. Should fix it for all of the 5 reports. The only difference would be is if you have a date hard-coded on the reports, like in the column definition. If you got a date hard-coded, that might give you a problem.
All right. Noah, can you maybe reduce your screen back to sort of the normal view? I think you have to select like return to normal view or something like that.
There you go.
Okay. Is there any way to add Word documents for financial footnotes where the information from MR can pull into the Word document?
So a financial report can go into a Word document. So in the library, you can have all these folders, like a quarterly folder, and have all your reports in that folder. And you can also add Excel documents or Excel documents in that same folder. They're not part of the report, but they're in the same folder.
All right. Can you run FRX with GP 2013 in order to run parallel with MR? I'm not sure if I totally understand that question, but the first part, can you run FRX with GP 2013? 2013,
they're not supporting FRX, but I have heard of clients that are running FRX with 2013. Not supported, but I've heard it's running.
Is it possible to use GP account categories in the row format?
Yes. Account categories? Yep, sure can. So if you have a row definition and you want to pull account categories, like the category for cash, you can reference that on any row in the report. And you can reference account categories on any row as well as any column or part of the reporting tree.
All right. How much time should a standard conversion from FRX to MR take? A single, in this case, a single company with 30 reports.
So that doesn't sound too bad at all. Should be pretty quickly there. It's really hard to say until you run the migration. You see what goes across and you see how many red circles you have. Every company's different. If you had to go back and troubleshoot all 30 of those reports, that's 30 reports with maybe 30 columns, maybe 30 rows and trees. So it just depends on how many red circles you have after the migration.
All right. Under FRX, the subtotals are ignored when totaling. How does MR handle this, and how are calculations in the reports handled? FRX, well, maybe I'll leave it there.
Subtotals are ignored. I think they were the same way inside measure. I haven't noticed a difference that I know off the top of my head, but so if you have a subtotal for a row and a subtotal in the middle, I think it should ignore that middle subtotal.
And I think the last question in our queue here, how will MR be licensed for viewers of reports?
So when you get your licenses, you'll have a certain number for administrators and generators and a certain number for viewers. For the reports. They're all like named users, so you have one license per each one of those. But now more and more often they're coming out with unlimited licenses, or at least matching what you have in the GL.
All right, and okay, now one very last question. With the data mart, have you encountered instances where it has to be rebuilt, and do you have examples of what would necessitate that?
So I have seen that. So during an upgrade, I've done the upgrade, and we couldn't make a connection to that old data mart database. So deleting that data mart database and rebuilding it went really quickly. So it wasn't a big ordeal. The data mart doesn't affect any balances in the GL database, so you're not losing any data, and all your report definitions are in that separate management reporter database. So the data mart is just the copy of the account balances and transactions from the GL. So deleting it and rebuilding it works really quickly and doesn't take much time at all. The only time I've done it is when I could not make a connection back to that old data mart database, or if I had reports and they were missing balances.
All right, with that, we are concluding our question and answer portion of today's event. Thanks to everyone for so many great questions. Randy, David, Miguel, Barbara, Kay, and everybody else who submitted questions today. Really appreciate it. And Noah, thanks so much for taking the time to present to us once again.
No problem. I'm glad to be back here with you.
Excellent. Thanks again for attending today. There is an evaluation once you close out of the session. Please do take 30 seconds to fill that out. I know our presenters always appreciate a little feedback. And that's it. Have a great day, and thanks for attending.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Noah.